This is the place where the battle took place that changed the life of the main character. The commander-in-chief is dead. This spear pierced his heart. He was not just a warrior, but someone who had super strength. Only he alone could kill the demon himself, if he remained alive. Because of the spear that hit him right in the heart, the resurrection spell will not help bring him back to the world of the living. Nothing will work. His comrade Mikhail reproached himself for the fact that the deceased was chosen for the role of commander-in-chief. The remaining warriors tried not to lose hope and looked for a way to resurrect the commander-in-chief, because Mikhail was considered an archmage of the ninth circle, who was strong in spells. And the spell was prepared, but the main condition was that the person was alive. And as we can see, no spell will help now. Michael regretted that he had not insisted that another warrior be the leader. He could not rely on a comrade. If we recall the past, both of them were chosen for the role of commander-in-chief. But Mikhail felt that he was not worthy of this honor, and in the end he should have insisted on his own, and everything would have been different. While the warriors were deciding what to do, the demons did not sleep and continued to attack. The archmage needed time to prepare an extremely powerful spell. The most powerful of the squad decided to help Walpurgis and distract the demon's attention with his power. The archer also decided to help him in this difficult matter. An unequal battle began, in which, as it seemed, the good side was winning. Many demons were killed, but exactly the same amount remained, and our fighter's strength was already running out. It is at this moment, when the forces are exhausted, that the most powerful demon begins to attack. The archer tries with all her might to kill Satan, but it only causes minor injuries. While the brute and the archer distracted the demons, Mikhail managed to prepare the most powerful spell, the spell of the ninth circle, and at that very second, a meteor shower began to rain down on the demons. There wasn't even a wet spot left of them, but this spell did not break the most important and powerful demon. Rather, it made him even more angry. Mikhail understood that he would not be able to fix everything because he was not as strong as his deceased comrade, but his conscience did not allow him to leave everything as it was. He felt responsible for his comrades. He thought about the fact that he was only an archmage of the ninth circle. He did not have control over the powerful 10th circle, but it was still worth trying. Maybe he would be able to leave a mark on history. Walpurgis tried to break the ninth circle to achieve something more, to go beyond the impossible. And now the superpower began to fill his body. It was hard and painful to restrain it. He had to try to restrain himself. It is this spell, which was only in theory, that will be able to achieve the return. The main thing is that now everything worked out. We need to change the course of events so as not to repeat the failure that led to the death of innocent soldiers. The spell was so powerful that mana spilled everywhere. Why didn't it work? You have to try, because the price of the spell is the lives of warriors, and it's not as strong as you'd like. Their main demon is already very close, which means my end is near. But hope dies last, and I hope that by some miracle the spell will work. There is no room for error. We need a smart commander-in-chief for our squad. We can't trust everything to a self-absorbed fighter. Not only he will die, but other soldiers as well. What kind of voice is that? Some kind of clouding in the head. This is my butler Mordvin, who is very worried. I remember these places. It can't be. I need reliable information to confirm my guesses. The necessary specific dates, which Mordvin will tell me. The success rate was minimal, but my spell worked and I was able to go back 20 years. And I can be proud of myself. With only 3 circles of magic, I was able to achieve what I wanted. I remember that my family, the Walpurgis, is famous for its magical arts, but my level of magic is not suitable for this family. Oh yes, I have a bandage. I don't remember at all what it's for, I need to think. And the butler will help me with the correct answer. There were only 2 options. Either I tried to commit suicide because of another depression, or Eileen crippled me because of a broken engagement. It looks like I didn't screw up with the second option. Eileen Rindle, the same one who was with me 20 years ago. That time will definitely not be forgotten. And tell me, Mordvin, what was the reaction of the Duke's family? There was no response from them. They need time, because they are not in the best position now. And then she appeared on the threshold. Eileen, it's time for the butler to leave and do his own thing. It would be better that way. Mordvin's face reflected sadness. Now was not the best time for conversations and meetings. And now I realize how good I am, how much I lacked this 20 years ago. Speaking of memories, Siegfried is that same narcissistic warrior who was 100% sure that he was the chosen one and could do anything. For some unforeseen reason, a mythical creature awakened, which did not frighten Siegfried. He was determined to defeat the Demon King. The wyvern was like a snack for him. Because of rage and selfishness, A huge number of innocent people died, and many estates burned to the ground. We must do everything to ensure that this does not happen again. Let's return to the butler, whom Mikhail had so hastily thrown out. This time, Mikhail's father was furiously and menacingly awaiting his son's appearance. He did not like the idea of the two young people having a conversation. The butler was afraid for himself and for Walpurgis Jr. He did not have the right answer to the master's questions. But there are no hopeless situations. Mordvin pretended that nothing had happened in Mikhail's room, and if something did happen, the gentleman would be the first to know about it. The head of the Walpurgis clan was still troubled by something. So, since I have another chance to fix everything, I must take advantage of it at all costs. I need skills much better than the previous ones. It's time to start. The first and most tedious thing is to correct the circular flow. A bit of theory, mana is that superpower that forms circles due to the fact that it rotates forward, that is, enveloping the entire body and gathering in the heart. This direction of mana is the only and correct one. But I think that superpower shouldn't be in one place. Moreover, there is such a term as free circulation. This means that 12 streams gather at certain points. It's becoming difficult to hold back mana again, and you can't help but think that your body will burst from excess blood. But I'm not that simple. I'm a magician from the Walpurgis family, which means that nothing can scare me, of course, not including the future that I saw. Everything worked out, although it was quite difficult. Thanks to free circulation, my circle is restored, and I will be able to use my powers to the maximum. Because I still had mana left, another circle was created, which only means that Mikhail is now a fourth circle mage. It's time to move on to the next spells called Ice and Fire Lance. To acquire the magic of the seventh circle, one must learn to use mixed magic. This is considered the highest level in the art of magic, which not every experienced sorcerer can achieve. But now I only have the fourth level, and this highest level is unattainable for me, so I thought, until I mastered the free circulation of superpower. But we must not forget that I am an active ninth circle mage, and I can use any amount of magic at the same time, and this is not enough for magic to be used for a long time. So far, I think this is quite a good success. You can breathe a sigh of relief because the primary problem has been solved. And then the door swung open, and an enraged father appeared, screaming about what his son had done. Mikhail was ready for this, so he met his father with understanding, which is what stumped his Walpurgis Sr. The Archmage began to justify himself to his father. He understood that because of him, the family's honor was no longer as perfect as it had been. These words made the master even more angry, and he was so eager to punish his son. But Mikhail only needed his father to listen to him and not spank him like a little boy. Then the son told his father that he did not do it on purpose. He had a plan. It was the Duke who asked the younger Walpurgis to break off the engagement, and they simply had to talk. And yes, it was a very self-confident decision. If you know how to intrigue, continue. What happened next? A moment of background. My dramatic changes as Mikhail Walpurgis began at the age of 23. I don't understand how Eileen got involved with such a pathetic, timid, spineless man. She didn't like that type of man. Not only did she not like him, she hated him, and therefore she did not want to take such a guy as a partner. She considered him a weakling. But there was something in the last meeting that made Mikhail wary. I hasten to remind you, father, that we agreed on an engagement with one condition, which said that neither of the couple would try to study other methods of mana circulation. After all, a pure heir is born only when the superpowers of the lovers are equal. It was very important for the families of the Knights of Magic to know that the baby was pure, because he would continue his lineage in the future. Well, let's get back to Eileen. It seemed to me at our last meeting that she violated this condition. The father's face took on a thoughtful look. He did not understand whether this was true or a lie. I decided to check with my son about the veracity of the situation, and Mikhail confirmed the master's worst fears. Eileen had been studying mana even before her engagement, in order to become a knight in the future. Walpurgis Sr. couldn't believe his eyes because, as an 8th level mage, he should have noticed the catch. But the Archmage continued to insist on his own. He assured his father that he himself had witnessed such an event. When Eileen practiced other methods of obtaining mana, her energy was not entirely stable. After all the words that his own son had said, the Marquis continued to doubt the words. But even here, Mikhail had already prepared a precise argument to confirm his words. It was at this moment that Walpurgis Sr. himself realized what power Duchess Eileen had used to hide her superpower from the 8th level mage. Was this really an instrument of ancient magic? While the Walpurgis family negotiated among themselves, Duchess Eileen honed her skills, but then she was distracted by her father, who decided to ask whether Mikhail had noticed the Duchess's abilities during their last meeting. To which the lady hastened to answer with 100% certainty that this pathetic weakling suspected nothing. The father believed his daughter, but there were still concerns, and Rindel, in turn, decided to clarify with her father whether he had serious intentions regarding the Walfurgis family. She did not even want to think about the fact that Mikhail could one day become her husband, and the father, in turn, was worried about the status of his family, so that their clan would not have any problems in the future. Now that Eileen had learned new magic, her job was to hide her talent. After his daughter found the ancient instrument, Rindel was confident in his daughter and believed that she was not worthy of a marriage of convenience. Meanwhile, Eileen had already found a replacement for Mikhail. She was interested in the heir of the Pavlov family, and today their family, together with their son, were supposed to arrive at Rindel's house. The background story of Leon Pavlov, who is the only son in his family, his sword skills are legendary. There is no better master in the entire empire. The conversation between father and daughter was interrupted by a knight who came to announce that a delegation had arrived at the Rindel house. The head of the family assumed that it was the Pavlovs who had arrived, but the knight hastened to report that Rindel the elder was mistaken on this account. Eileen's father's face showed bewilderment and incomprehension. There was only one meeting scheduled for that day with one family, so who else could show up? Yes, it was an uninvited guest who appeared on the doorstep of the Rindel family. The young man's mood was determined, which cannot be said about the butler, who only moaned about the reality of their actions, and was not entirely sure of his master. Mikhail had a plan prepared and needed to act decisively. Returning to the conversation between the father and son of the Walfurgis family, Michael went to the Rindel house to confirm his suspicions about the ancient instrument. The father, in turn, wanted to figure everything out. He did not understand why the Rindel family had proposed breaking off the engagement and why they had beaten his son. But Mikhail continued to answer his father quite calmly. He understood that the Rindel family was buying time, which they already did not have. Therefore, they could come up with anything to stay in an advantageous position. Marquis Walfurgis did not know what to do. He considered different options. Their family cannot lose in this love duel. It was necessary to act together, and the head of the greatest empire needed Mikhail to be responsible for his words. Even though he was a son, his mind could be clouded by love for Eileen. Mikhail did not think of giving up and continued to assure his father of the truth of his words. And the head of the empire threatened the archmage that his son could be left without the title of successor and without a home for slander. To ensure that the father did not doubt his son, he had to act persistently and irrevocably. When he went to the duke's house, the butler was terribly worried and concerned about the reputation of the family he worked for, which was already in doubt. The head of the Rindel clan was not prepared for the fact that Mikhail himself would visit them after what happened. Today, they had completely different plans, and Walfurgis Jr. could only ruin them, so Eileen's father asked the knight to escort Michael out of the estate. Having heard from the knight that he could not receive him today, Mikhail calmly headed for the exit, which even surprised the servant of the Rindel family. But the butler still didn't calm down. He didn't understand what the plan was then, if the gentleman took it so lightly about refusing to accept him. But the archmage was calm and immediately decided to settle down to rest under one of the trees on the estate's territory. To say that everyone was surprised would be an understatement. The knight did not like what their uninvited guest had planned, especially since he had to prepare to receive the worthy guests who were about to arrive. Mikhail had no intention of leaving at all. He continued to sit by the tree. The house servant Rindel had already begun to use force against the guest. The youngest of the Walfurgis family did not leave this act unnoticed, reminding the knight that this very knight had once served his family, and that the fact that he was now subordinate to the duke did not give him any right to treat his former master in this way. Knight McCain fell to his knees, admitting his guilt before his master, and remembering that just recently Mikhail was a different person who could not allow himself such insolence, but what had happened to him now? Michael approached Mackay again with an offer he couldn't refuse. If he did so, Walfurgis would leave the estate in a flash. The knight returned to his master and reported that Michael had ordered him to have Eileen come out and talk to him. The young man's tone surprised the duke, as he had never done anything like that before. McCain understood that this guest was an inconvenience to his host, and he would do anything not to upset him. Eileen, hearing the conversation between the two men, said that she would solve this problem with her lover herself, because it was because of her that he came here. Eileen thought that Mikhail remained that weak-willed boy, with whom it would be so easy to say goodbye. When going to meet her betrothed, the Duchess asked the knight to accompany her, and the uninvited guests continued to wait for action from the owners of the estate, hoping that everything would go as planned. Until Eileen approached, Mikhail was replaying their conversation in his head and recalling what Leon Pavlov, whom the Duke's daughter so wanted to get engaged to, was famous for. The fact is that the Pavlov family is famous in the empire, and their son is a successful swordsman. He is very confident in himself and knows that he has no equal. He is the absolute opposite of Mikhail. And today and here, they must meet. Meanwhile, the butler plucked up the courage to ask the master about how his mana had become so much stronger. This question made the Archmage tense. Why would he ask such questions? As it turned out, Mikhail gave himself away when he got angry at McCain. It was then that the butler noticed that the power of this magic did not match the master's skills. Mordvin continued to argue his words by saying that he had served his father for too long, and was also a good observer who knew the theories of magic. Mikhail asked him point-blank whether Mordvin thought that the gentleman was breaking the rules. The butler needed the precise and truthful answer he had been waiting for. The Archmage extended his hand to the butler and offered to test his master's mana himself. Touching Mikhail's palm, the butler could see that there were 4 circles. But when did he manage to reach it, if only recently? Then the magic of the 4th circle had not yet strengthened. The next question that interested the butler was how the gentleman was able to achieve such a result in such a short time. Then the Archmage said that the revelation came to him after he was rejected. Here, Mordvin very correctly noted that 5 more refusals and the Archmage will be able to achieve the art of 9 circles. The butler became even more worried. It was unknown what his master had planned, what lengths he would go to for his achievements. And Mikhail continued to think about his plan. It seemed to him that he would not be able to get rid of the Rindel family so easily. He thought about the consequences that could happen if the Rindel family ceased to exist altogether. And then the Marquise's brainstorming was interrupted. The Duchess approached, and in a steely voice said that she had said everything concerning the engagement earlier, and that Mikhail should not be here any longer. This time, the Marquis was not at all shy towards Eileen, and he said what no one asked him for an answer that time. Everything was decided for him. The Duchess had no time for long and pointless conversations, because she believed that the break in the engagement was a mutual decision, and it was time for the hospitality to end. But the Archmage did not want to retreat and continue to drag out time. His question to Eileen was straightforward. Was there a more important person coming to visit them? The Duchess didn't like this question and didn't want to answer it at all. Is this Leon, who is honing his skills despite politics and family matters? I think he will be very surprised when he comes to your family, which keeps so many secrets. Oh yeah, and he doesn't like anything that goes against morality. I wonder if he knows that our engagement has been unilaterally broken off. It seems to me that this young man is for everything to be fair. Do you want to start a new relationship with a mistrust of your betrothed? In the worst-case scenario, everything will look dubious, and nothing good will come of it. Eileen did not expect such pressure from the once timid Mikhail, and was sure that these were just words and nothing more. In order to confirm the words of the Rindel family, the Archmage came so close to the Duchess that McCain had to immediately stand up for her. McCain threw Mikhail away and started yelling at him. He was too rough with his former master. This is the essence of the House of Rindel. Even the knights do not know how to behave properly. They are allowed too much. Eileen gave the order to stop this disgrace, but the first time Sir did not listen to her. Then the Duchess hastened to remind that the honor of the Rindel family could not be disgraced by the ignorance of the knights. It's so good that we all understood each other. Now we can talk. But only in a different place. Maybe you should invite me into your house after all? There were no options. Eileen agreed to receive guests in the house. Mikhail was pleased with himself. A start had been made. Finally, Mikhail, Mordvin, McCain, and Eileen entered the Rindel family palace. The butler looked around, while Mikhail pretended that he was there on a permanent basis. While they were walking to the guest room, Mikhail deigned to drop words about how everything in this palace remains unchanged, and Mordvin decided to correct his master, saying that the Archmage was not here often enough to talk about changes. Mikhail wanted to yell at Mordvin, but noticed in time that he was too grumpy and hot-tempered. The butler kept wanting to find out the master's plan, because he was all alone in a strange, inhospitable palace, where he was not at all welcome. The Marquis said with a grin that he was not alone here, that he had his servant with him, whom he could rely on. Mordvin was completely puzzled as to how he, a simple butler, could help his master in the negotiations. The owner hastened to instill confidence in the butler and set him up for the best outcome, because he is the only one who can be trusted. It was while they were talking that they reached the living room that Eileen had given them. She had little time, so Mikhail suggested that they talk to her face-to-face right away. The Duchess agreed and asked McCain to leave them alone. Taking the confident pose of the mistress of the house, Eileen hurried to find out the reason and urgency of the conversation. Mikhail immediately began to accuse her of his lies, of the fact that the future failed wife had violated the agreement that had been concluded between the families, and specifically that the superpowers of the lovers had to remain at the same level and were not subject to any training. The Duchess continued to insist on her own and claimed that there had been no training, and if he didn't trust her, he could see for himself. Referring to Mikhail's excessive talkativeness, Eileen noted that it was he who told everyone that they were engaged, and this put the bride in an awkward position. The Archmage did not deny this, because at that time he was completely different, in love and weak-willed, who so strongly desired Eileen. Regarding the check, it's a great idea. This is exactly what is needed now. The Duchess's face no longer showed the same confidence that had been there before, since Mikhail had suggested a test in front of witnesses. He believed that the Rindle family deserved everyone's attention, just as he had once deserved. Heiress Rindle began to guess about Walpurgis' plans, and this made her very nervous. It would be entirely fair if the Pavlov family were to witness our disagreement. The same Leon Pavlov appeared in a horse-drawn carriage. He was surprised by the castle of the future bride, because it was much larger than the Pavlovs' estate. Before Sir Maxim and his master entered the castle, the knight hastened to remind Leon that he should not show his character in conflict with everyone, to which Leon said with a grin that he would try to restrain himself. Pavlov Jr. had a question. Why does his father need this engagement? Most likely, this was all so that the emperor would notice Leon and transfer the right of succession to him. And the sword expert also remembered that his future bride had broken off their engagement the day before. And he was very interested in the reason, which I think he will find out anyway. But what decision will he make after that? And the negotiations between Eileen and Mikhail were gaining momentum. Mikhail put pressure on the heiress of Rindle. He saw fear and horror in her eyes. He waited for an answer from her. Eileen decided to use attack as a defense and accused Mikhail of coming to their house without an official visit from their family. But Walpurgis Jr. had foreseen this moment and showed Eileen the coat of arms of their family, which meant that with the help of this coat of arms he could be considered a representative of the family. This coat of arms allowed Mikhail to speak for all members of his family. That is, what Mikhail says, the whole family will confirm. Everyone will be held responsible for the lie. And from Eileen's side, the same situation is at work. Her slander will sound like a challenge to the entire Walpurgis family. Mikhail wanted Eileen to confess everything herself, and then there would be no consequences for her. Eileen was furious, and she, in turn, threatened Mikhail with a reprisal that the Walpurgis family might not be able to withstand. Do you agree to the test? The Archmage did not calm down. The father came to the aid of his daughter, very unexpectedly, of course. He had already heard enough from their conversation, and he didn't like Mikhail's assertiveness. And the Marquis was very happy about the Duke's appearance. It would be possible to resolve everything much faster. And a little about Eileen's father. Duke Rindle is the 5th knight in the Empire, and one of the 12 greatest swordmasters. And if you look a little further, he is the one who will suffer because of the demon. And the Duke does have a talent. To avoid further cataclysms, the Duke was surprised by Mikhail's behavior because such a style was not at all typical of the Archmage, whom they had previously easily rejected. The Duke decided to keep his doubts to himself, and he asked the Archmage if he had seen the dragon's heart, since the Walpurgis family is one of the few that has one. But Mikhail responded with sarcasm about his father, who is a somewhat picky and secretive person, who did not show such a curiosity to his own son. The Duke laughed heartily at the joke of the heir of Walpurgis. He did not think that such a trait was inherent in the youth. This further influenced the Archmage's assessment, and he continued his conversation about Eileen's lies. The head of the Rindle clan easily said that the engagement was broken off due to Mikhail's incompatibility with the brilliant Eileen. Our hero did not give up. This reason did not seem to him to be a compelling reason for breaking up. Then, he explained that Rindle's daughter had been secretly training her aura, and this was considered a violation of the agreement, mind you. The Duke tried to ridicule the boy, to show that all his words were just a joke. After all, he was the 5th knight of the Empire. He would have known about the aura first. Yes, as the 5th knight and as a father, you knew everything. Now the head of Rindle was not in the mood for laughing. Some boy was trying to accuse him of slander. Then Mikhail began to doubt. Perhaps Eileen had not spoken about her training and had accidentally fallen into the hands of the Duke. But there was no punishment because Eileen was so talented that she outshone her father, and he, in turn, canceled the marriage of convenience. Eileen's father continued to sow doubts in Mikhail's head because it is not easy to survive the rejection of the girl he was in love with. The Duke put pressure not only morally but also with his aura, so that the boy could not control himself and his thoughts. Mikhail did not give up and continued that no matter how talented Eileen was, she was able to make a small mistake, which served as a hint. The fifth knight continued to deny the Archmage's words. Then it was necessary to move from words to actions, meet with Leon himself, and tell him the whole truth about this family. Something had to be done, and Head Rindle stopped Mikhail, offering to clarify specific points and then resolve the conflict peacefully for both sides. As he left the living room, Mikhail's face was pleased. Most likely they had managed to find a common language. Now the Rindle family had to decide who would bear responsibility for their daughter's misdeeds. Eileen was terrified by the thought of what this, as it turned out, not idiot would now perform. Both underestimated this young man. He was clearly hiding something, but there is always a way out. Eileen did not want to let her father down and is ready to answer to the Empire for her training and her zeal to become a knight. The father also admitted his guilt. He regretted that he had not noticed his daughter's talent earlier. And since he is a parent, all responsibility falls on his shoulders. Eileen was so independent that she managed to reveal the aura without much training. Isn't that a reason to be proud of her daughter? What I can be sure of is that it will never occur to Michal to destroy our family. He has completely different goals. Wait and watch. All that's left is to just wait and watch. Walking along the alley of the Rindle estate, Leon and Mikhail finally met. To say that Leon was delighted is to say nothing. Here it is, the moment that Mikhail had been waiting for. The meeting with the Pavlov's representative took place. After Mikhail introduced himself, Leon tried to find out the reason why Eileen's ex was here. The greatest knight of the sword was aggressively disposed towards the Archmage. Michael knew firsthand how hot-tempered Leon could be. The swordmaster attempted to use force against a member of the Walpurgis family, but Mikhail dealt with her with ease. Leon was surprised by such an exhibit and tried to understand who he was. After all, according to rumors, he was not very smart. Mikhail's task was to now, having returned back, not to let the selfish Leon take the leading place. This time, they must win the fight with the demon. Memories of the past came flooding back so much that Mikhail even jerked towards his sword, but managed to stop in time and force Leon to listen to him. Due to Leon and Mikhail's past acquaintance, the Archmage knew a lot about the Swordmaster's character, which helped him in the present time. The heir of Walpurgis reassured Pavlov regarding Eileen. Now she was of no interest to him. Mikhail needed Leon. Interest was clearly aroused. Mikhail offered Leon cooperation, which in turn flattered the Swordmaster. To restore the course of events, Mikhail again remembered the past, the time when they had already fought with Leon. It was their last battle, in which Leon contributed and died. Standing on the body of the slain demon, the Swordmaster only regretted not having trained his aura earlier. This would have helped him kill the demon commander of only the third squad more quickly. In this battle, not only Leon himself suffered, but also the entire army, fighting with the demon commander of the second squad. The master was pleased with himself, but for all this he paid with the lives of the fighters and his own too. Leon finally decided to ask Mikhail if he really doubted him as a worthy warrior. Let's return to the present time. The young people had already sat down in the gazebo to begin negotiations. Leon Pavlov behaved quite freely, which infuriated Mikhail, although over many years he had already become accustomed to the knight's manners. To get to the main point, the Archmage began the conversation with rumors that were circulating in the church. There was a rumor that there was a prophecy about a warrior who came to Earth to prevent a catastrophe. But Leon Pavlov was skeptical about all these rumors. He believed that it was just a legend that did not follow anything. But our magician knew for sure that this prophecy would come true, and that is why he returned, to prevent this prophecy. This prophecy spread throughout the world, throughout the Empire. It was the prophecy of Cassandra. She predicted the arrival of demons on human Earth. Leon didn't take all these rumors seriously. He could only make a sarcastic remark that the Demon King was considered to be the Walpurgis family. Michael's task was to make him believe in the demonic invasion, and preparations for the attack began. Leon was about to leave this pointless conversation, as I heard from Walpurgis about aura training using the Miller method. He couldn't understand how a magician could know about the training of a true knight. And this happened because, in the past, Leon himself told Mikhail that his aura training had reached a dead end. The Archmage continued to talk about the skilled swordsman and the best master of aura, who was Miller. Walpurgis offered to help Pavlov train Miller if he agreed to his offer. Pavlov was furious. He did not believe Mikhail that he could know about these trainings, because it was Leon who was the first of the knights who comprehended these teachings. But there was one thing. This was Miller's unfinished work. And it was Walpurgis who knew what was written in this book to the end. Pavlov faced a choice. He did not understand why the boy was not interested in Eileen, but was interested in some rumors that were not destined to come true. And if he did not agree now, he would not receive the rest of his knowledge about Miller, and this interested him much more. Leon tried to compare the rumors about Mikhail and his family. Everyone considered him a fool, and even the Rindel family broke off the engagement because of this. Could it be that someone had miscalculated? Everything was very confusing. After much deliberation, the swordmaster decided to trust the archmage. During their personal meeting, Mikhail showed himself to be worthy. After Leon's consent, of course, he wanted to make sure that he had not been deceived and that there would be evidence of Miller's teaching. Walpurgis had already foreseen this and was prepared. They entered the training ground of the Rindel clan, which made Leon a little nervous because this was not allowed to happen. Michael hastened to reassure the knight, saying that he had permission to train. Having lifted the knight's sword, it seemed too heavy to the magician. He had to use the strengthening spell, which worked to strengthen the muscles. This spell is only available to a magician with the 4th level. The knight could not understand what was happening. But Mikhail has already prepared something for him, which Leon will definitely be delighted with. Until the magician began his demonstration performance, Pavlov did not understand how the principles of aura training could be shown, and not told, and even more so, how this was possible for a magician. The method of training the aura according to the teachings of Malera is not very different from other teachings, but it was he who achieved incredible results and became famous. To understand that you have mastered Miller's teachings, just look at the body. An engraving will appear. Miller's method is also good because the aura reaches the maximum limit, which is 70 units. Leon followed all of Mikhail's instructions to achieve the desired result. So the first instruction was to awaken the aura. As soon as Leon awakened his aura, an engraving began to appear on his face. Something went wrong. The engraving appeared, but it was not quite what was required. The swordmaster was not satisfied with this result. To smooth things over, Mikhail asked how Leon had managed to find Miller's teachings. The answer was simple. His father helped him with this. Pavlov Jr. immediately began studying, but only after some time did he realize that another half of the edition was missing. Because Leon was only able to learn part of the teaching, he knew he was doomed. And it was then, 20 years ago, that he passed on the knowledge to his friend Mikhail. And so, having returned and met with the master of the sword, I need to return all the knowledge that I have. The archmage began to take actions that he did not intend to show twice. Leon had been warned about this. He awakened his aura, and that same Miller engraving immediately began to appear on his body. The aura level reached its maximum. It was very spectacular. The knight fell off his feet at what he saw. He couldn't believe his eyes. Mikhail wanted to impress Pavlov even more, but his magical power was not enough. Pavlov was so impressed that he could not believe that some magician could put Miller's teachings into action. Of course, now Leon believed Mikhail and began to realize that he too would be able to learn. The knight was so emotional and asked the magician to teach him everything he could, and in return, he would carry out all his orders. When Mikhail answered yes, Leon didn't even understand it the first time. He thought he would be refused. Firstly, an official appeal to the Walpurgis family was needed, since the demonstration performance was carried out on the training ground of the Rindel family. Having said these words, Mikhail headed towards the exit with a calm soul. And finally, Leon wanted to make sure that Mikhail would still help him. Just as Walpurgis was about to leave the Rindel house, the head of the family called out to him. He was interested in whether Mikhail had achieved his goal, because this performance was not so easy. The archmage realized that Rindel had seen everything. In addition, the Duke asked for forgiveness from the Walpurgis family and wanted to correct his mistake. He realized that his behavior was inappropriate for the head of the family. Mikhail, in turn, apologized to the Duke and wished him a successful engagement with the Pavlov family. As it turns out, the outcome of this engagement is already known to Eileen's father. There is nothing worthwhile in it. The Duke did not calm down. He hinted to Mikhail that, with today's visit and his skills, he was able to convince Leon that he was not an idiot at all, and that most likely, the engagement was broken off not because of him. The head of the Rindel family was interested in whether they could now regain the former trust of the Walpurgis family. It was then that Mikhail realized that Rindel was worried about his reputation, and he invited the Duke to the family estate for negotiations. But then he had an idea concerning Eileen. He offered to mentor the Rindle family. The Duke didn't understand what this boy wanted to do. There was still some kind of catch. Having reached home, Mikhail was met by a joyful father. He was pleased with his son because he, an 8th-level mage, did not notice the deception, but his son, somehow, sensed it. The father sincerely praised his son, but the latter thought it was too much. Michael was simply restoring the honor of the Walpurgis family. As it turned out, the Duke listened to the advice of the Archmage and sent a letter to the Walpurgis family, asking for an audience to offer his apologies. This was to the advantage of the head of the family. He really wanted this conflict situation to be on everyone's lips. The Marquis was pleased that he could trust his son, and he in turn did not let him down. The son was able to wipe the nose of the arrogant Duke, pleased his father. Now that Mikhail had succeeded in the initial stages, it was necessary to continue to put pressure on the elder Rindle, and this meant that it was necessary to ask his father's permission again. Mikhail was persistent and stubborn in his conversation with his father. Mikhail's words and the resolution of the conflict with the Rindle family inspired confidence. It would be worth thinking about. The father tried to dissuade his son from the idea, saying that the Duke was smart and cunning enough and he could easily do something behind their backs. While Fergus's heir was persistent, he was confident in himself and knew what to do. The father agreed. It was time for the boy to grow up. Mikhail felt his superiority and was glad about this outcome of events. Leaving his father's office, the Marquis once again praised his son. The boy was growing up to be a worthy replacement, but the head of the family did not understand what had happened to his son. He had changed a lot. Since childhood, Mikhail was a good and kind boy. He had character traits that did not include steadfastness and boldness of spirit. Maybe growing up affected him that way. Although the Marquis had agreed to negotiate with his son, his own hands were itching to tease the Duke about something that hurt. 20 years ago, even before Mikhail was able to return back, an internal conflict occurred in their family. Each of the huge Walpurgis family wanted to take the place of the head. Michael saw and understood this, so he made it so that the Walpurgis family collapsed. How did this happen? 3 days before the engagement was broken, Viscount Nostra showed up at the estate. Viscount Nostra is the greatest vassal of the Walpurgis family. His aura is only 1 level below that of the head of the family. As a youth, the Viscount helped Mikhail's father. His abilities were so great that he became close to the head of the family. Already from that age, the Viscount wanted power, not the power that was due to him as a vassal, but the power of a leader. Michael was the first heir to the throne. Now he thought it was time to keep an eye on the Viscount's actions. The butler, who was always with the Marquis, became wary, because previously the Archmage had been on the side of the vassal. Here, Mikhail explained to the butler that he had been taught the magic of the third circle by the Viscount. Mordvin had mixed feelings. When the Viscount taught Mikhail the third circle of magic, there was no limit to the youthful happiness. When the Marquis had an epiphany, he decided that if the Viscount was a threat, he needed to get rid of him as soon as possible. The head of the Walpurgis family was very grateful to Viscount Nostra for his help and support, so he could not be stricter with him. Perhaps this is what allowed the Walpurgis family to falter. In the present tense, Mikhail wanted to correct his past mistakes, and therefore decided to invite the Viscount to a conversation. The butler doubted that the Viscount would obey the Archmage, but judging by how quickly the vassal came to the Marquis, he was also waiting for this conversation. The Viscount walked with the hope that Mikhail would offer him to train the Archmage in the future, but the youth had his own solution, which left the vassal at a loss. With a smirk on his face, Michael suggested that the Viscount fight without any magic. From memories, these were not the best times. The empire was collapsing. It was not the best of times because of that very vassal. There were only a few loyal people left from the Walpurgis family who tried to fight for their family. All of them were threatened with a deadly fate. The family was attacked by followers of that same demon. The head of the family was one of the strongest in the family, but he was struck down by illness. The chances of winning were slim. All the capable and powerful magicians had abandoned and betrayed the clan. Only he, Viscount Nostra, could save the family. All hope lay in him. When the vassal approached the demons, everyone waited with bated breath for a miracle from the 8th circle magician. No one was breathing. Everyone was trying to hear the spell that would save them. But the miracle did not happen. The miserable coward betrayed the family and everyone was doomed to death. The Viscount surrendered, and the Walpurgis family came to an end. As for what he did, it's time to bring him to justice. There is no forgiveness for what he did. Mikhail thought a lot about why the Viscount did this, and finally figured it out. Now, all that was left was to make everyone see and understand what kind of person he was. Mikhail continued to put pressure on the Viscount. He needed to achieve a duel with the vassal. After all, if the Viscount was going to teach the Archmage, then his powers and skills should be clearly better than the students. The Viscount continued to deny it. He only boasted that it was he, the vassal, who helped Mikhail reach the third level of magic. Naturally, Mikhail wanted to achieve more, and he needed to be convinced of the vassal's strength. The knowledge he had received from the Viscount had already lost its weight. Is it really that hard to prove your words in practice? If he is really a cool magician, then this duel won't be difficult for him. Well, the last argument that the Archmage made was that if he loses, he will unquestioningly study with the vassal, and Valfergus confirmed his words with a personal oath. And if Mikhail wins, the Viscount will become his student. With great doubts, the Viscount agreed. Returning to his chambers, the Viscount was furious at the youth's impudence, how he could offer a duel using only his own magic. Who did he think he was? The Viscount was confident in himself because he was an 8th-level mage with dozens of battles behind him. And where was this Archmage without any training, and with his fantasies with fairy tale heroes? The Viscount's main goal was not to be the leader, but to be better and higher than the head of the family. And here is such a gift from fate. Michael Valfergus himself, the only son of the head, offers a fight. This is an opportunity that cannot be missed. The Viscount was already imagining in his mind how he would win the fight, and the boy would become his student. Now that superiority over the family was in his hands. The next morning, the butler ran into Michael's room, quite alarmed. Rumors reached him that Mikhail had challenged a vassal to a duel, and this greatly frightened Mordvin. Mikhail realized that if the rumors had spread, it meant that the Viscount had taken some action. There was no way to retreat. Mordvin was, as always, on his own wave. A wave of panic and bewilderment, he tried to dissuade Mikhail from the idea of a duel, saying that an Archmage could not become a vassal's apprentice. The butler knew very well that Viscount Nostra was a man who could not be trusted, so cunning was his nature. Someone, and not he, should be the teacher of the heir of the Walpurgis family. The humble servant asked to explain the master's plan to him. Then Mikhail explained that he suspected the Viscount of deception and needed proof. The complexity of the whole plan was also in the fact that the father was very close to the vassal and trusted him completely. They had many common events that united them, almost into a single whole. Father will not be able to be strict with the Viscount, which means that this task must be carried out entirely by Mikhail. The vassal must show his true face. There is something else in this fight. It is not just a duel, but a duel bound by a promise. If even one of them breaks this verbal magic, then the magic will leave him. The butler appreciated the plan, but there is a chance that Mikhail will lose. But the Archmage also promised Mordvin that he would definitely win this fight. It is worth remembering that during this battle there is a condition. The Viscount will use the same magic as Mikhail. During the conversation, Walpurgis noticed that the butler was hiding something. He demanded to see it immediately. As it turned out, it was a letter of resignation. Mordvin is afraid of all the consequences that will follow the actions of the young owner. At that very second, Mikhail used fire magic and the statement burned almost in the butler's hands. Mordvin begged Mikhail to stop because the vassal's magic level was 7, while the Archmage's was only 4. The difference was huge. Mikhail's chances were almost 0. The owner, already with complete seriousness and a little severity, stated that he was confident in himself. Otherwise, he would not have let everyone down. The Archmage told Mordvin, again, that he knew about the deceit of the Viscount's 7 circles. Mikhail reasoned logically, in order for the higher circles of magic to appear, it is necessary to thoroughly master the primary circles. But the Viscount considered that all this was not for him, and skipped working on the initial levels. Of course you can use them, but the initial spells will take more energy. And therefore, all his magic, like the 7th level, is just an illusion created by him to gain the trust of other people. Mikhail's advantage is that he will use spells correctly, which means that the attack will be instantaneous and low cost for the magician. But how the Viscount will cope is unclear. The son decided to invite his father to this spectacular battle. The Marquis, in turn, wanted to remind him that his son had not yet resolved the issue with the Rindle family. The father was angry. He did not understand what kind of circus his son was setting up, why he was wasting his magical powers so senselessly. It seems that rumors reached the father, and he, like the butler, was worried that his son might lose and become the Viscount's apprentice. But it was not to be. The father took out a bat and warned his son that if the bad thoughts did not leave his son's head, he would have to use force. The son tried to stop his father. He clarified that Viscount Nostra was only a vassal, which meant that he was a servant of the family and nothing more. Again, the son's words made the father think. It was unclear where the magician, who had only recently reached the 4th level of magic, had such confidence that he could fight a 7th-level magician. The head of the Valfurgus family did not know what to do. Doubts overcame his thoughts. After his father once again threatened his son with a bat, Mikhail promised that he would win for the sake of peace and tranquility of the Walfurgis family. The father's blessing was received. The time of the Viscount had come. Meanwhile, the Viscount was talking about his victory, about how now, after winning, the Walfurgis family would obey only him. These mere thoughts of the vassal drove the Archmage into a rage. He wanted to tear the lying Viscount to pieces as quickly as possible. Before the fight, Mikhail decided to test the strength of the training hall. The training room was so strong that it was probably possible to use any spells. The first spell that Mikhail decided to test was the Flash spell. This spell is so simple, and that is why it belongs to the 1st level of magic. But there is still a twist to this flash. It can not only be directed precisely at the target, like a bullet, it can be controlled and then it will circle around the entire battlefield at the behest of a finger. And if you apply mathematical knowledge in calculating coordinates and rotation angles, then the level of this spell immediately increases to the 5th level of magic. Another plus, by saying the word explosion, you can explode the flow of superpower. That's all Mikhail's superiority over the Viscount, is that he knows many subtleties in spells and controls his mana perfectly. In an hour, everything will happen. We will test the remaining spells. In the past, the Viscount taught Mikhail not according to the rules, in a hurry, in order to get new circles. But in this way, you will not learn all the nuances and will not be able to get circles higher than the 8th. Our Archmage was talented. Such are born once in 1,000 years, and therefore, he was able to reset and get the magic circles in the right way. And in the meantime, the time for the duel had come. The hour had come, and the Viscount was already tasting victory. He imagined himself ruling over the Walfurgis family. Before the duel, Edward Walfurgis decided to visit his vassal and make sure that he agreed to fight with his young son. He also considered it necessary to say that all the memories of their joint battles remained in his memory, and that is why Edward would simply be an observer. The Viscount, meanwhile, did not miss the chance to flatter the head of the family. Arriving at the training ground, Mikhail was very happy about his father's visit. The father, in turn, warned that there would be no more spectators, and the results of the duel would be known only to the 3 of them. He gave Mikhail and the Viscount a chance to think again about the consequences that would follow the duel and that the result could no longer be influenced in any way. Viscount Nostra grinned. He wanted this duel because he was confident of his victory. After no one present gave up, Edward Valfurgus sealed the magic circles, meaning that the maximum level the opponents could use was level 5. The opponents exchanged pleasantries and replied that they were ready to begin the fight. The Viscount was the first to attack. He used a slow spell. The spell was magically powerful and gave the vassal a time advantage. And Mikhail, in turn, used the confusion spell. The opponent didn't think that the young magician was capable of such a thing. The Viscount wanted to know how Mikhail, a mage of only the 4th level, knew such a powerful spell. But he never received an answer. For his excessive insolence, the vassal rewarded the Archmage with the following spells: Fireball and Windblade. The Viscount did not calm down and sent the next spell, Earth Rupture, after him. Mikhail was initially confused and used the barrier against the vassal. Naturally, after this, the loyal servant was in shock. How did the boy manage to block the Viscount's attack, after all? He had only recently acquired the magic of the 4th circle. There is a small nuance here. The physical body cannot cope with many things, but in magic everything is different, if, of course, you approach it with a cold, calculating head. Mikhail started raining down spells, his favorite being Flash. The Viscount was confused because this spell was only of the 1st circle. Additional introductory words rained down to increase the spell's power. Multi-charge, free control, multiple explosions. Change of direction, accurate penetration, control, expanding the attack zone. Here it is, superficial training, not knowing so many nuances, and this is only 1st level magic. But this was only the beginning of the show of real magic. Against Michael's magic, the Viscount was able to easily hide behind the shield spell. He was pleased that the enemy's magic was so weak. But it was not to be. Mikhail used the most powerful spell Explosion, which in one go destroyed the vassal's defense. The seventh circle mage could not understand how such a young mage could control his superpower so skillfully. He asked the archmage for an explanation, to which Mikhail replied that he had used a bit of cunning as well as a bit of mathematics. The Viscount was furious. He did not believe the words of the archmage. His lack of knowledge of the basics told him only one thing, that Mikhail was lying and using forbidden techniques. But Edward's heir quickly put the servant in his place, saying that by accusing him of the forbidden act, as a representative of the Walpurgis family, he could provide evidence of deception. The Viscount quickly understood what Mikhail was getting at and asked for forgiveness for what he had said. Walpurgis Jr. accepted the liar's answer and sent a new portion of magic at him at the same second. This time the shield again did not save the vassal. He fell to the ground in despair. After Mikhail said that the fight was not over yet, the Viscount jumped down and said that he was pleasantly surprised by his master's strength. The Viscount became more ferocious. Firstly, he doubled his shield power and Mikhail's magic stopped destroying him. And secondly, the vassal began to cast 7th level spells. Multi-charge attack is the spell the vassal decided to use. Here Edward was already worried. Not only does the Viscount use 4th circle magic, but he can also improve it to his 7th level. When the head of the family saw the vassal use 3 spells of the 4th circle, he realized what their servant was hiding from the family. Meanwhile, Viscount Nostra was jubilant. He used a powerful spell of the 4th circle, Fire Spears. It looks like it's time for the duel to end. Edward, watching all this, had already accepted his son's defeat and acknowledged the rightness of his bosom friend. But it was too early to rejoice or be upset. Mikhail is not so easy to break. Michael was able to easily stop the fiery spears and turn them into dust. And once again, the Viscount did not understand how an archmage who had recently reached the 4th level could so easily and simply stop the attack of such a serious opponent. Mikhail's answer was simple. It was all about the ability to control magic. And without talent, this cannot be achieved, which means that of the two of them, only the archmage has talent, and the vassal has no reason to fight and resist in this battle. If you don't agree with my words, then prove otherwise. And the spells Ice Spear, Demonic Hand, and Thorn Attack flew. As they say, a talented person is talented in everything, so Viscount Nostra made a fool of himself again. All this was already getting pretty boring for Mikhail. The spell's multi-charge attack and his favorite flash flew. This attack was much more powerful than the previous ones. Would the vassal be able to stop them with his shield spell? Indeed, explosions can be amazing. Yes, the 7th level mage survived this attack. But a new batch of the archmage's wrath awaited him. For all the betrayal that the vassal had committed, he would pay today. Mikhail used the confusion spell, and while the Viscount was still unconscious, he began to hit him hand to hand. The servant no longer knew how to escape from the master's anger. The Viscount was about to say that he was surrendering, when Mikhail immediately interrupted him with the words that today was clearly the day when the archmage would take revenge on the vassal. But then Edward intervened. He admitted that his son had won and the fight was over. There was no point in beating the Viscount any further. Mikhail longed to hear words of mercy. He wanted to see all his insignificance, perhaps to feel superior, but the vassal was so beaten that it was scary to watch. It's good that the head of the family was able to stop his son in time. Well, as usual, until the father threatened the heir with his big fist, he would continue to rush into battle. Finally, Edward had to ask Viscount Nostra's consent to the defeat. To prevent Mikhail from thinking about finishing off the vassal, his father used the teleport spell to send the Viscount to his chambers. The head of the family expressed his surprise. He had no idea that his son had such strong magical skills. The father compared his son to the apostle, the Twilight Mage, who disappeared in his time, and all because his power was just as powerful. Could the son have guessed that all this was just a coincidence? The father also couldn't help but see that his son was truly talented, even though the spells were not complicated. But the way he controlled his magic was admirable. It wasn't without flattery. Mikhail only had to say that he was just like his father. His father stopped arguing. Edward was interested in his son's goal. Did he really want to show off his skills to his father? He understood that his son did not even consider the vassal for the role of teacher. Of course, Mikhail saw everything in advance, and he would not have allowed a teacher like the Viscount to teach him. And Mikhail, in turn, wanted to make sure that his arguments about his father's friendship with the Viscount were correct. And the assumption was that the father was simply lonely, because he alone rules the entire Walpurgis family, and the Viscount, supports and helps him. And as it turned out, the guesses were correct. Worried about his father, Mikhail warned that as long as Viscount Nostra remained in the Walpurgis house, He would always be under the control of the Archmage. And the Viscount, being in his chambers and having come to his senses, understood that all his skill, which as it turned out was false, was seen by Edward himself. It was such a disgrace that even with all the desire, nothing could be corrected. And here comes Mikhail to remind him of the terms of the bet. Now the vassal will definitely be trained by the youth. Only now, Viscount Nostra realized that Mikhail had foreseen all this and was able to arrange it so clearly. His goal was not humiliation. He was testing him. Vassal had an idea that by becoming Mikhail's apprentice, he would have a chance to fix the situation. And indeed, it was connected to the Rindell family, since there had been no revenge from the Walpurgis family yet. The Viscount beamed. He was glad to avenge the family that had been so kind to him. But this time too, the servant was wrong. They had completely different plans for him. The Viscount did not believe that Mikhail would really insist that the vassal become the Archmage's apprentice. It was unworthy of him because firstly, he was older than Mikhail. Secondly, his level of magic was much higher, and thirdly, he was, after all, a friend of the head of the family. The heir of Walpurgis could not be broken. He was strict and daring. He reminded about the magical promise before the duel, and if one of the magicians breaks it, then all his magic disappears. The magic circles will be reset. Viscount Nostra himself did not understand how he fell into this trap. Now he could lose everything. And so the teacher and the student came to the training ground. The Viscount, through clenched teeth, the Viscount called Mikhail a teacher. He needed to preserve his magic. Previously, Mikhail wanted to simply destroy the Viscount, but now he realized that the vassal could be useful to him. To begin the training, the Archmage asked what the vassal wanted to learn from the teacher. Naturally, the Viscount wanted to finish all this as soon as possible, and how could a 4th Circle Mage teach a 7th Circle Mage anything? But Mikhail believed that the vassal had something to learn, for example, the stability of magic circles. During the duel, the Archmage noticed that Viscount Nostra could not use his magic to its full potential, as his circles were incomplete. And another nuance was that he was starting to have heart problems. Only apostles are capable of creating circles without talent and without problems. Mikhail suggested that, trying to match the level of the head of the family, Viscount Nostra created his magic circles using the apostles' method. But everything has a price. The price of a vassal is his health. The Archmage has a plan to save his family's servant. But to do this, the Viscount will have to start all over again. After listening to Mikhail, the Viscount began to yell that it was Edward who told him everything, about the apostle, about the problems. He was sure that the son and father wanted to set him up, and that was why they planned the duel. All this was just the Viscount's invention, and he did not even suspect that when the triple spell was cast, the Viscount felt something strange. Yes, it was at this moment that Mikhail noticed that the Viscount's condition had worsened. And this means that with such superficial magical knowledge, the magician will not last until old age. His life is under threat, but there is still a way to survive. Even though the Viscount doesn't like it, there's nothing to do. He'll have to choose between life or the preservation of his sub-magical circles. The vassal's mana will go to the Archmage, and his level will drop to the 5th. But do not forget that he has a wonderful teacher, Mikhail. The Viscount resisted. He did not want to lose what he had already acquired. It is clear that everything that has happened recently has shocked Viscount Nostra, and it will be difficult to come to terms with it. Is his life dear to him? Does the head need a friend who will not be able to stand up for the family in an unforeseen situation? Even without this idea, Edward knew everything about the Viscount in his past life, but decided to leave everything as it was, but in vain. It was at this moment that the vassal remembered the incident involving Edward. In this recollection, the head of the family thanks his friend for his support and encouragement. It is not easy to be the head of a family, and it is doubly difficult when there is no one around who understands. A person who not only understands, but also continues to grow to the level of the head. Walpurgis expressed gratitude to his friend and trust that he did not have in others. This is the memory that helped the Viscount make the only important decision. He decided to become a better person. I can be proud of myself. In a short period of time, I have already acquired 5 circles of magic. Very dignified and easy. Although, I feel sorry for this good man, the Viscount. He is so worried about his loss. There is nothing wrong with that, but now you can be completely sure that he won't do anything treacherous. Cassandra's prophecy about demons was supposed to come true in 7 years, but no one believed in it. And in vain, humanity is not ready to fight demons. They are much stronger than magicians. No one could resist the demons at that time, and horror came after the 7th Knight of the Iron Wall, Kelbian, was killed by these demons. Half of the empire was destroyed. The heroes could not cope with such pressure. Nothing could be changed. And so the Argo squad was assembled, in which our Mikhail was a member. These magicians could still fight demons, and quite successfully. It is necessary that in the present time everyone believes in Cassandra's prophecy and begins preparations for the invasion. Cassandra was supposedly 2 years younger than Michael. In the past, she told everyone that a demonic invasion was coming. She repeated it on every corner, but no one listened to her. She also mentioned a hero who was supposed to save humanity, but he never showed up. For the prophecy to work as it should, you need to believe in it, in every word of it. I wonder what happened to Cassandra after the prophecy. After the regression, it is impossible for everything to repeat itself. But I have already taken care of the selection of fighters myself, and Leon, to whom I have already sent an invitation letter, will help me in this difficult task. Michael's next problem was Cassandra. He had to find her. Before this, she lived in a temple, but since no one believed her, she had to flee. Mikhail's head was splitting into pieces. He needed to find the fortune teller at any cost. Due to the brainstorming, the Archmage did not even immediately notice the butler entering the room. The appearance of the owner confused Mordvin a little. The butler came to inform Mikhail that a guest had arrived, and the Archmage immediately guessed that they were talking about Liana Pavlova. Leon Pavlov arrived quite quickly, which Mikhail did not expect but assumed. Leon was in a fighting mood. He wanted to start training as soon as possible. He wasn't even interested in his own engagement and preparation for it. It was just a marriage of convenience. And the knowledge and preparation will remain in his memory forever. Mikhail was ready to start training, but he had one more condition added to the agreement. Leon was furious. There could be no talk of any conditions. Michael quickly calmed the knight, saying that the stated condition would not harm Leon in any way. The question was about the Pavlov estate. It turns out they had problems with it. Leon pretended not to understand what Mikhail was talking about. He denied everything that was said, but then Valfergus mentioned the dungeon and Leon's expression changed. Besides, his shifty eyes gave him away. He definitely can't lie. Without waiting for a reaction, Mikhail continued to talk about the dungeon that the Pavlov family discovered a year ago. It contained a huge amount of superpower. In order to investigate everything, Pavlov Sr. sent a detachment of people on reconnaissance. Leon was shocked. He did not understand where Walpurgis got all this information from. With this ridiculous look and such questions, Leon gave himself away. All the information was correct. There was no specific designation for this place, so everyone called it the dungeon. In the past, as Mikhail knows, he sent 5 squads to explore this dungeon, but no one ever returned from there. The marriage of Pavlov and Rindel is one of convenience. The Pavlov family has financial problems. All their money was spent on studying this dungeon. After all these details, Leon began to doubt his people. Someone was clearly talking too much, and in this regard, Michael was able to calm the knight down, saying that the rumors were coming from hired workers. Okay, but what kind of condition is that? This dungeon is too expensive and also too problematic for the Pavlov family. But our Mikhail has already thought of everything and is ready to come to the aid of the knightly family. In Mikhail's past, the Pavlov family could not leave the dungeon alone. The family could not cope with the dungeon, it was not cleared, and research groups did not return from there. The Pavlov family was never able to achieve any success. There was someone who got ahead of them and took all the riches of this dungeon for himself. Mikhail's assistance consisted of offering himself as a research group. But is Michael better than the mercenaries who were experts in the dungeon? Of course, he is a mage, which means he can use basic magical knowledge. Leon had his doubts about Mikhail, but the way he acted and spoke inspired confidence. He was able to convince the knight that the Pavlov family would not lose anything if Mikhail failed, and could even profit if luck was on his side. The offer was profitable for the Pavlovs, but if Mikhail went underground, who would train Leon? An agreement is an agreement. Before leaving for reconnaissance, the Archmage was ready to pass on his knowledge to the knight. But conversation and the consent of the youths was not enough. Permission from Father Mikhail was needed. The Marquis was not very happy with his son's latest idea. He again reminded Mikhail that the very first question his father entrusted to him had not been resolved. There was no progress on the problem with the Rindel family. The father decided that jealousy was raging in his son's heart, because Leanne Pavlov and Eileen Rindel were engaged. Did the son really have a plan to ruin this union? But why? The Archmage couldn't do anything stupid, especially since a deal had been made between the young men. and this means that the magical promise cannot be broken. The father listened and took out his educational tool again, to which the father sarcastically replied that it was a manager's staff. Edward explained that he had chased demons with this staff in his time. This bat staff had repeatedly saved the head from death. He could have at least washed away the traces of blood so that it didn't look so scary. Mikhail's face was so secretive that his father wanted to know all the details of the impending operation. Even with the bat in his hands, the son did not reveal all his cards to his father. Seriously, I had to give my son an answer without any details and wait for the result of his actions. Although his father was strict with Mikhail, he always believed in his son, even in the last days of his life. The Archmage explained that everything that Mikhail was doing now was interconnected, and later the father would be able to see the result. But for now, the details needed to be omitted. Once again, the head of the family trusted his son. A good replacement is growing up. But then Mikhail noticed and felt something. Guests had arrived? They weren't expecting anyone. But there was no one there. The Archmage imagined it. Left alone in the office, the head of the family did not understand where his son got such abilities from. He clearly knows a lot, but tells so little. It turns out that a man with unusual magic, which you can't just hide, really did enter the office. This unusual person was the family's faithful servant, Mordvin. The butler, who was always by Mikhail's side, reported that the boy had changed greatly in terms of character and magic. The butler noted that the talent was passed on to his son from his father, and it was now that Mikhail noticed his strength. There is nothing surprising. The talent of the Walpurgis family is passed on from generation to generation. If the butler's words are true, then it's time to ask him for a favor. Mordvin already understood everything without the owner's words. The young men were just about to set sail for the Pavlov family when they were called out. It was Mordvin. He was trying to keep up with the men because Edward had given the order to go to the Pavlovs' estate together with Mikhail for his own safety. Leon didn't understand at all why such a big boy needed a nanny for the journey. Michael trusted the butler, so he easily took him with him. Here is the Pavlov estate. Mikhail was interested in observing the cleanliness and order in the estate, although not rich, but dignified. Walpurgis Sr. would have definitely liked this estate. The residents of the Pavlov estate look happy and joyful. There is no anxiety or fear on their faces. It is impressive. The Archmage also noticed a brick path. It was quite long. This could only mean one thing. The Pavlov family had well-established trade relations. Mikhail expressed his gratitude to the Pavlov's father for such order and peace of citizens. Leon can be proud of her father. The Archmage's words were flattering for the heir of the Pavlov family. Leon recognized and respected his father for all the things his father did for the estate and for the people. And in the past, Leon was always proud that he was from the Pavlov family. It was then that he was the only one left alive from his family. Dear Leon also boasted that they have an army that hunts monsters. Upon arrival, Leon came to his father, Count Dagir Pavlov, with news that they had a guest who was very important to their home. Naturally, his father was frightened by such a visit from Walpurgis himself. Count Dagir Pavlov was obsessed with antidepressants. He immediately began taking these pills for calming. The Count was a very anxious man. He could no longer live without taking pills. After half a can of pills, the father finally calmed down. The father was ready to listen to his son. What was the purpose of such an important guest's arrival? And where was he now? Of course, after the son's answer that Michael Walpurgis was in their living room, he had another anxiety attack and needed pills. Escape from them. He was already tired of being a manager, tired of being nervous and worried. But there was nothing to be done. Mikhail had come to negotiate with the Count. There was no escape from this. Leon explained to his father that the purpose of Mikhail Walpurgis's visit was their dungeon. The Count was confused. He didn't know that someone could be aware of their dungeon. Here Dagir completely went crazy and decided to sign documents in which all affairs would be transferred to the younger Pavlov. Of course, Leon wasn't happy with this arrangement. The father's mental health is good, but he didn't even listen to his son. Once again, the father was finally able to calm down and was ready to listen to his son. The Walpurgis family was one of the greatest families in the empire, and if the dungeon was known to this great family, it meant that they could easily take away all rights to the dungeon. Naturally, Leon thought about this when he first heard Mikhail's offer to help with the dungeon, but the Archmage's arguments were quite convincing. Finally, the father decided to listen to Mikhail's conditions. The conditions were simple. After accessing the dungeon, Mikhail would begin teaching Leon training using the Miller method. There is no point in doubting him, because the Archmage has already shown Leon his abilities. And yes, they have no way to refuse because the promise of the mages is in effect. And if someone breaks it, they will be left without magic. This was a lucrative offer for the Pavlovs. They needed full training using the Miller method, and even greater interest was shown in this dungeon. Nevertheless, the Count decided to negotiate with Mikhail. Meanwhile, Mordvin was also panicking, as usual. He knew that the Pavlov family was not so simple. The butler understood that by taking over the Pavlov family's dungeon, the entire empire would find out about it, and there would be big problems. There is truth in the butler's words. But Mikhail was a little ahead and understood that the Pavlovs would not miss the chance for full training. All that remains is to successfully negotiate with the head of the Pavlov family. Mordvin still did not calm down. He did not believe that everything would go according to Mikhail's plan. A minute later, the Count himself appeared on the threshold of the living room. Count Pavlov was famous for his ability to make quick decisions. Without preludes, he immediately got down to business. How an ordinary magician is better than the specialists who had previously explored the dungeon? What attracted the Pavlovs' dungeon to an ordinary magician? Mikhail obviously knew something more than the Count himself, and to find out the truth, he had to agree to Mikhail's terms. Of course, the manager will have different prices. He will not let you enter the dungeon just for training, but what else can he ask for? It would be a bit frivolous to tell you everything I know, but I have something more important. Mikhail couldn't know everything for sure, but if something valuable was found, he would split it in half. The Count and Mikhail both understood perfectly well that Pavlov alone would not be able to cope with the dungeon, especially since they had already spent all their finances on studying this very dungeon. The Archmage was able to convince Dagir that cooperation would not be with the families, but with Mikhail alone. That's a completely different matter. Then we need to discuss the timing. And in terms of time, it only takes 1 day. As Walpurgis Jr. had expected, so it happened, the Count agreed to all the conditions. And now, Mikhail, Leon, and Mordvin were standing at the entrance to the dungeon. The three of them. Mordvin and Leon were terrified and scared by the thought that there were only 3 of them and no army of knights nearby. The unknown frightened them even more. Mikhail understood perfectly well that Leon was scared, and he suggested that Pavlov's heir not go with them. But the Pavlov family motto is, "Don't run away from difficulties." And Leon ran towards adventure. At that very second, the Archmage used the freeze spell to stop Leon from doing something stupid. Yes, the knight didn't like it at all. But in this way, Michael saved his life. Walpurgis explained that this dungeon is not so simple. And the entrance to the dungeon is the first trap that everyone falls into. Without preparation, there is nothing to do there. This dungeon needs energy from everyone who enters it, which is why the dungeon is teeming with all sorts of different living creatures. To stay alive and not perish like everyone else, you can try to feed the dungeon with the fireball spell. This superpower energy should be enough. As soon as Mikhail used this spell, the invisible doors shattered into pieces. You had to be on guard. It was unknown what or who could attack them. The Archmage recognized this place. In the past, he was in this place with Argo's squad. This place is the Tomb of Asar. It is in this tomb that sacred objects and ancient ruins are kept. Then the Argo squad discovered an artifact that could save people's lives. The saint from the squad explained how to use the storm artifact correctly. The storm can be so strong if the owner's strength is also great. With the help of this artifact, the owner can reveal his potential. Yes, and before the regression, this storm was with the beloved commander-in-chief, Siegfried. This artifact was unable to help Argo's squad, and all because Siegfried used up all the magic of this attribute within a week. At this time, you need to keep this artifact with you so as not to repeat past mistakes. Mikhail's partners inspected the dungeon, and the survivors' rumors did not match reality. As it turned out, time in this dungeon does not work either. The Archmage explained that in this case, the time stop spell works on a larger area. And yes, the level of this magic is high. Immediately, Michael ordered everyone to stop. The next test awaited them. It's hard to believe, but there were nothing but goblins around. Leon immediately panicked. He suggested going back and sending the knights to deal with them, since 3 people wouldn't be able to handle that many goblins. It was in the past that Mikhail alone was able to cope with all these creatures, so there is a way out, how to do without victims. Michael took out a knife and began to extract the jewels from the wall. Leon couldn't understand why this was necessary. An explanation was required. As it turns out, goblins are lovers of jewelry and enjoy it. But these jewels are not so simple. These crystals cause hallucinations. If you use magic, you can cause hallucinations everywhere, and the goblins will do all the dirty work for our guys to get what they want. Michael made hallucinogenic bombs and threw them right at the goblins. A wow effect happened. The bombs did their job. The goblins started the mess. All that was left was to wait. The first gates were successfully opened, all thanks to knowledge of the basics of magic and understanding of the essence of goblins. Right there, Mikhail noticed the spatial pouch. It was interesting how it ended up here. This serious artifact had never been seen in the dungeons before, so how did it end up here now? Mikhail was furious. He couldn't imagine that Siegfried had tried here again. Lian had also heard about this spatial bag. You can put anything you want in this bag. Before the regression, all these artifacts were much deeper in the dungeon by Mikhail. But that's not the point. Inside the bag there was a hint in the form of an inscription that sounded like this. Give up your greed. Mikhail knew that it was impossible to exit this dungeon, which meant the clue was inside. It dawned on the Archmage that the greediest one here in the dungeon was the main goblin. Perhaps he should put the goblin's magic stone in the bag. Here Leon volunteered to help, because the process of getting the stone is quite difficult, and it would be much easier for a knight to cope with the task than for a magician. Well, of course, now is the time to fight for the right to be the best and the first. Once again, Michael came up with a great idea to not waste time and identify the best of the best. There were two main goblins, and therefore two hearts. So who could extract the stone faster? Leon immediately used the haste spell, took out his sword and pulled out the goblin's heart, proud of himself. He wanted to show off to Mikhail, as the knight, but alas and alack, the Archmage also completed the task just as quickly as the knight. Having taken out the stones, the youth saw that the stones continued to shine, which meant that the superpower had not left the stones. Despite the fact that the knight was upset about his loss, Michael did not try to calm him down and took the bag for himself, putting the stones in it. And then, some key appeared, and Mikhail solved the riddle of the dungeon correctly. Suddenly, the trio found themselves near another door that was not there in the Archmage's past life. According to their calculations, they had 4 doors left to open, and the mission was accomplished. A mysterious smile appeared on Mikhail's face. He suggested that there was an option to cut their path. The travelers passed from one gate to another with ease. Watching Mikhail, Leon could not understand how the Archmage knew more than he did at such a young age. There was clearly some kind of catch. Leon decided to discuss his guesses with the butler. Here Mordvin could only say one thing, that all the rumors that go around the Empire about Mikhail are true. He is timid, unsure of himself, lacking willpower, and too soft. Of course, rumors and reality are so different that it is impossible to believe. Mikhail does not try to hide his past, he admits it, but recently he has changed a lot, and in a completely opposite direction. While Mordvin and Pavlov were gossiping, Mikhail could not understand what and where they had missed. The Trinity approached the 4th gate. During the moments of regression, both times the interior of the room changed. What is now behind these gates, one can only guess. The clue was the inscription on the door, "Don't try to predict." This means that the only way out is to simply enter these gates. Leon tried to stop Mikhail, but he was determined, and for the safety of his partners, he cast a spell on them. This spell was supposed to protect Mordvin and Pavlov from physical and mental shocks. Once inside the room, everyone was plunged into pitch darkness. Even the light spell did not improve the situation. The room was quite spacious, but there was still no clarity. Mikhail wasn't worried about Mordvin, but he needed Leon alive. As soon as he thought about it, Leon from the past appeared. Valfergus. The Archmage immediately realized that this was not reality. But the knight from the past wanted to talk to Valfergus, who 20 years ago was the only one who could survive in this hell. Mikhail honestly answered his illusion that he was too lazy to negotiate. Leon from the past was furious. He did not understand why Mikhail managed to escape and for what such merits. Mikhail responded. False Gillian insulted the Archmage, to which Mikhail responded by ordering the illusion to disappear, because he knew that his friend would not speak so unflatteringly of him. The illusion magic and darkness disappeared. It's good that Mikhail was able to cope with it. Otherwise, he could have gone crazy. The darkness disappeared and the butler appeared, who was constantly looking for his master. Mordvin reported that thanks to Mikhail's protection, nothing happened to him. Mordvin also clarified that these stones exist, stones of superpower, which can now save the Pavlov family. But Michael's protection did not help the knight, and he sat holding his head, in which voices were still sounding. Mordvin did not know what to do in this situation, and Mikhail, meanwhile, had already headed to Leon to use his power to bring the heir of the Pavlov family to his senses. And Leon heard the voices of reproaches and hopes of his father. They forced the son to be better, to be the support and hope of his father. As it turned out, all the training, the fights, the knight did all this not for himself but for his father. so that the father could be proud of his own son. Approaching the bent Leon, the Archmage was even taken aback. The knight did not look like himself. There was only one proposal in Pavlov's head: to kill Mikhail Valfurgis, with whom he still had to share all those stones with Mana. And so all the wealth would go only to the Pavlov family. Leon was mad, but the thought that this would benefit the family did not give him peace, so even the sword was already drawn. There is no counter to the crowbar, and Mikhail used the flash spell against his partner. Naturally, a good thrashing could solve many problems, especially since Legelian understood that Mikhail was much stronger than him. A miracle happened and Pavlov Jr. was able to return to reality. And the young people continued their remarkable journey. As they moved forward, the travelers began to be overtaken by fog. It's unclear what's going on. The partners have already searched, which means the illusion spell is inappropriate here. Mikhail managed to reach the right place. The beautiful maiden was already waiting for our victorious savior. An interesting turn of events.